Hi guys, I am Will Galluccio, and today we're finally going to talk about the Silver Jubilee settings. Yeah, a lot of you asked about this, and finally I'm going to answer to all of you. And I wanted to thank you actually because everyone is posting comments about what I should cover next. So pedals, Silver Jubilee, Line 6 FM4, which I'm going to talk about, don't worry. But today it's all about the Silver Jubilee. As you can see, I've wrote down here something in order to cover up everything about the Silver Jubilee and basically the amp question. First of all, I need to mention that my settings are always changing. In fact, uh, the EQ of any amp basically changes depending on the situation. If you play in an open space or in a closed room like this, and it changes also because of the kind of room that you're actually playing in. Because if it's an empty room or a room with a lot of stuff inside, then the EQ also changes because of the guitar that you're using, or the pickup height, and strings, what kind of strings you're using, and what kind of speaker you're using. So it's really a kind of a personal taste, and I'm going to show you my EQ, but I do not guarantee that this EQ that you're going to see will work for you. And also, the EQ is something strictly related to a particular amp. So you cannot simply copy and paste my EQ on your amp if it's not a Silver Jubilee. Actually, even if it's a Silver Jubilee, it is probably not going to work because even two exact same amps are going to sound a little bit different between each other. Then, what do we need to cover? Yeah, I receive a lot of questions where you ask what kind of amp should I buy? I cannot afford a Silver Jubilee. What I can suggest to you is that any clean amp can do the trick. Obviously, it has to be a Marshall style amp, a British style amp, but because of the EQ, but really any clean amp can do the trick. But at this point, there aren't really many British amps that are so clean like the Silver Jubilee and the Marshall Mayer Jones amps. So you really need to find something that is clean, that has a British EQ, and I don't really know many amps that can do this, but there are also some transistor amps like the Marshall MG, if I remember correctly. Yeah, it is a cheap amp at it, and it is not going to bring you in the John Heaven Paradise sound, but it can work. If you cannot afford the Silver Jubilee like me many years ago, just save up some money and I'm sure that you'll make it someday. Don't worry. Anyway, go ahead. Yeah, the relation between Marshall Mayer and Silver Jubilee. Now that I mentioned the Marshall Mayer, basically, like my dear friend Olivert made me notice some time ago, actually, and I must thank him because he's a really great guy. Anyway, the Marshall Mayer was actually panned on the right speaker, while the Silver Jubilee was panned on the left speaker, if I remember correctly. Because if you split a track, you can hear here the Mayer and here the Silver Jubilee. Anyway, the Mayer sounds a little bit cleaner, obviously, and much brighter. In fact, John's sound is a combination of a slightly brighter and clean sound and a slightly darker and crunchy sound. But both are definitely crunchy sounds, even if the Marshall Mayer has a little bit more headroom and he's and it's quite cleaner. Anyway, basically you need a clean amp, or if you can run stereo, it's even better. But this clean amp has to get an already overdriven sound. In fact, that's what John did pretty much with his CE1. In fact, the CE1 has a preamp inside, sorry, that crunches the sound. If you cannot afford a C1 original pedal, I'm building in order to help people some small boxes which include an exact replica of the C1 preamp. And you can watch my videos about that. I'm not going to demonstrate this today, but basically you need to know that you must have a clean amp and an overdrive pedal that fits your amp and that compresses the sound that comes before, so it needs to be at the last spot of your pedal board. So now I'm going to show you my settings of my amp, but again I must mention the fact that those settings are working for me right now in this room with this temperature, with this weather, etc. So I could change them pretty much anytime. So let's go to the settings. Okay, so this is my amp, and now I'm basically going to cover up every single setting one by one. What we can say about presence. I have it set up at about 4, maybe slightly less, and that's really matter of personal taste, because presence makes your sound brilliant. And what I usually do is I basically crank it up when I have an old set of strings on my guitar that needs to be more brilliant. But when I mount a new set of strings, I usually set it at 4. Then we have bass, which is really an important setting, and it actually is not at complete 10, it's maybe slightly less, and that's because I'm not using a Mayer and I need my sound to be a little bit less dark. But if you do own 2 amps, maybe you could crank this to 10, or if you are playing outside, I usually increase this, because when you play in a little room, your bass sound becomes too boomy, but outside you need more bass usually. Then we have middle. What can we say about middle? Really nothing special, because I found my favorite spot at this, and I don't really touch it anymore. I have a fear of touching it. I don't really plan to touch this in the near future. Then we have treble. Okay, so it is slightly less than 2, and if you look at John's settings, this was way less. It was at about 1, but again I need slightly more treble because I'm not using a brighter amp together with my Silver Jubilee, so I need my sound to be a little bit brighter with basically just this amp. And I really change this setting every time, because if I'm playing outside, if I change my guitar, that's the only parameter that I'm changing every time, really. Then we have the output master, which needs to be out, because if you pull it, you are on the normal channel. If you push it, you are on the lead channel, which I'm not going to analyze today. And if you're using one cab like me with only two speakers, that's a two speakers cab, basically you cannot go past this point, basically, because then it starts to crap out your sound. It starts to crunch, but it's not a crunch that comes from your amp, it actually comes from your speakers. So if you own a two 4x12 cabs, you can crank it up to 10 like John, even if from settings it looked like not full on 10 but on 9. But yeah, if you are outside and you have two cabs, two big cabs, you can definitely go past this point. But if you use just one cab like me, one small cab, if you go past this point, then your amp starts to crunch, but it's not a pleasant crunch, because it's not coming from your amp, but it's actually coming from your speakers that cannot handle all this power, basically. I usually set it like this, but nothing special. So then lead master, yeah, you can set this wherever you want, because today we're not going to analyze the lead master channel. And then input gain, this needs to be pushed inside because you can pull this knob, and I usually set it to maybe a little bit more than 8, between 8 and 9. When you have this pushed inside, you are on the clean channel. And what I noticed is that this knob doesn't really make a huge difference in terms of gain and crunch. In fact, if you do not own a C1 preamp or a C1, you will have hard headaches to make this amp crunch, because it's really a clean amp, like the Marshall Mayer. It's one of the cleanest sounding Marshall valve amps, in my opinion. And that's probably why John chose this particular amp. Anyway, you can make the amp crunch naturally by pulling this knob like this, and now you are on the rhythm clip channel, as you can read here. But I'm pretty sure that John didn't use the rhythm clip channel, because this feature makes your clean sound work perfectly, and your sound becomes really pleasant and really good crunchy. But it's not what John used, because then if you activate this pull feature, then your sounds, your distortion sounds become really, I don't know how to describe this, but filtered. Yeah, that's the right word. Your DS2 becomes filtered, and it depends on how you set your input gain. This knob filters your distortion. It would act like a tone knob, basically. Then also your big muff will start to lose maybe more than 50% of its volume, and you would start to have all those issues that you don't want to have. So basically you need to push this knob inside, set it like this. Even if you place it lower or higher, it doesn't really make a huge difference in terms of gain on the clean channel, because this head is really clean. And yeah, that's it. Actually, when I first got this amp, I didn't own a CA1, so I was really mad because I spent a lot of money and this amp was really clean. I could not make it crunch. And I was asking, why is this happening? And then I bought my C1 and all the problems were solved by his preamp. So you again need a clean head amp and the C1 preamp basically. Again, this knob doesn't really make a huge difference in terms of gain, and I set up my EQ by ear and then later on looked at John's settings, and guess what? I found out that my settings were pretty much like his settings, because there is a picture of his settings online. And yeah, I hope that you enjoyed this video. If so, please subscribe, leave a comment if you want, and stay tuned for more videos. Thanks.